Welcome to this new how-to. In this how-to we're going to look at how you can set up the autopilot in a Cessna 172. This video is a follow-up of a previous video I posted about setting up the flight plan in a Cessna 172. So currently we're located runway 24 of Rotterdam The Hague Airport. As you can see here in the display. Well, let me zoom in a bit, it's maybe a little bit too small for you. Here you can see it. So what we're going to do is we're going to first set the departure route. So we're gonna switch to departure and then we're gonna set departure. But before doing that, what do I need to do? Of course I need to set up the departing airport in the flight plan. Echo Hotel Romeo and then Delta. So it's being added to the flight plan. Now I can go again to the procedures page, go to departure, hit enter, and then I can select the departure, right? So I showed you also in another video which I posted this week, and if you look at the top of the screen you can see that video how to select the correct departure route. So in this case I can press enter and I will see several departure routes, Andy, Arnhem, Enki, Lonnap, Som, Tol and Wood. So let's select Arnhem to B in this case, and always have a look at how it looks like in the VFR map, right? The VFR map is really, I would say, something which you can sometimes use. I'm gonna press load and this will show you what happens. So in this case we're gonna fly to this. Well, fine for me for now. We will change it and I will show you how to change it in a few minutes. So back to the flight plan, right? So, or back to the autopilot I should say. So we've been instructed to simply do a straight departure, straight out departure, right? Because we don't have submitted a flight plan. So we're gonna simply depart, and once we're airborne and at some altitude we will switch on the autopilot. And I will start to explain all the buttons which you have on the autopilot. Just pull back the stick. I will hide the HC window. Slowly, not too fast. So on the left side you see the city of Rotterdam already appearing, right? So, and there's also some industry which I've added to the flight simulator, and I will add those links to those, I would say, add-ons for flight simulator which are free. So you can also add them to your flight simulator installation. I would say I really like those add-ons because they're of great quality. So we're airborne and now it's set time to set the autopilot. The bottom part is the transponder, right? It's been set to 7000 because we're flying VFR, and this shows the current altitude. So now we're at 700 feet and we're gonna use the autopilot to climb to 2500, and you can use this button to do that. So it has not, I would say, does not have two options like the bottom one, as far as I could find out, right? You can, or hey, that does have two options. So it looks like that the part which has is the, I would say, the close to the dashboard is for the thousands, and the small one is for the 100s. So once we did that, we press the engage autopilot button. based on this, it will start to climb. If it does not start to climb, then have a look at these two buttons, because these buttons can be used to set the climb rate, or the feet per minute which it's climbing. So we'll move away. And why do I do that? Well, to keep an eye on the airspeed and to keep an eye on the altitude meter, right? So you will need to keep an eye on both of them, because if you set the climb rate, let's say, too steep, then your your airspeed will go down, and eventually you will go into a stall, and you will probably, in most cases, you will crash, right? Unless you're, I would say, at a very high altitude, you might be able to correct it. So that's one thing, and that were, I would say, already a few buttons which we used. So in this case, we use the AP button to switch on the autopilot. We use these buttons to configure the altitude, and we use the up button to increase the vertical speed. Now there are two other buttons which are really useful. Those are the heading and the navigation button, and those can be used to, say, decide the direction the aircraft is going, right? So in my case, I want to have a look at the VFR map.
Rotterdam Tower, Cessna Mike
First, answer HC.
change.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a turn, because if I would go here, then you will see that the rod is here, and that's the one we're gonna use soon. So we're gonna make a turn to the east, and we're gonna use this button. So this button can be turned, and as you can see, when pressing it, I should zoom in a little bit further, it will remove this red part, and this red part is the direction of the aircraft as soon as we're gonna press, let's say, the heading button. So we're gonna set it to east. Now we're gonna zoom out again, and we're gonna press this magic button. As soon as we did that, you will see that the aircraft will start turning. It will start turning until it has reached this position. So you will see that in the meantime it will continue climbing. So we're almost there. And then it will level out. In the meantime, we're gonna switch to a different channel. We're not gonna request transition to sea airspace, at least not yet. And now we're flying directly to Rotterdam. So to use the nav button, we need to set up the flight plan. So to do that, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set a direct course. We're gonna set the direct course to Rotterdam Airport. So echo hotel. Romeo Delta. Romeo. It's a Delta. And then we're gonna hit enter. And there's gonna activate. Fine for us. So it will now remove the procedures or the departure route. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna select an approach, and in this case what we're gonna do is we're gonna we want to land on runway 24. I'm gonna use the localizer, and the transition in this case is ROT. If we would go miles, that would be somewhere in the North Sea. And we're gonna press activate, right? That's something different compared to what we did in the tutorial. Remember, in the tutorial we only pressed load, but now we're simply pressed activate. And the difference is that it will now activate the approach. So first we're gonna fly to Rotterdam, or RRT, sorry, and then it will pick up the approach route. So in the meantime, we're gonna tune into IFR clearance.
Skip Hull approach Cessna Mike India Golf 0014 miles south of Rotterdam. Request IFR to Rotterdam, ready to copy.
So it will give us the score code, and to see that the score code now changes from 7000 to 7154, right? You can also do it manually by pressing the buttons here, 7154, and then we're gonna say read back. Okay, as soon as you press read back and provide the, I would say, instructions back, then it will automatically update the transponder code, but you can also do it manually, pushing the buttons here. So now it will say, hey, you need to increase to 9000. So we're gonna do that.
Turn left heading 045, proceed on course
And
climb,
in the
maintain 9000 feet.
what we need to do is we need to press the up button again to make sure that we're climbing, but you can see that it directly starts to climb too steep, so keep an eye on that. So you can see it's doing crazy stuff. Goes really fast.
Transition clear to Romeo Oscar Tango Cessna 001.
In addition to that, you need to keep an eye on the autopilot, because I saw frequently that if you change stuff, it diverts back to the heading mode and not to the I would say actual waypoint. So we need to keep an eye on it. And in the meantime, right, let's show you some nice scenery. There's the city of Rotterdam. And then we would go here, there's the soccer stadium, there's another bridge, and if you look here, there's another bridge also. So I will add all those links to the video subscription, or description I should say. So you can see that the aircraft now is doing weird stuff because it simply goes too slow, so keep an eye on that. If you have the same behavior, then in some cases it says now I need to maintain 2000 feet. Happy for us, because that's a lot easier, and you can use this one to, let me go to it a little bit closer. You can use the big button to change the thousands, and then use the small one to use this one. Then we're gonna acknowledge the transition.
Descend and maintain 2000 feet, Cessna 001.
And now keep an eye on it. So here we're helping the aircraft a bit, hopefully. Because it needs to understand that it needs to drop. It's doing its best to say follow the flight plan which we set up. But it looks like that it ignores the altitude, so we're gonna help it a bit. So we're gonna press the button here. So what we did now by pressing the altitude button is setting the altitude to a fixed rate. In some cases it helps to switch off the autopilot completely and then switch it on again. Don't don't forget to switch on the other options then in that case. So we were instructed to go to 2000 feet. So let's see if it decreases. If not, we're gonna help it again by pressing the down keys. And you will see that it now will start to do what it needs to do. So if the autopilot for some reason doesn't pick up the new values, then make sure that you're deactivating and reactivating it, because in some cases it doesn't work as it should work. So keep that in mind. So now it has been set to nav. It has been set to 2000 feet. You can see we're decreasing. We're still decreasing. We can decrease throttle a bit. If we would switch on this option, you can see that we're flying from Rotterdam to the next waypoint. For those interested, you can still look at the flight plan, and the flight plan tells you, hey, you're now flying from Rot to Echo Hotel 258, the bearing and the estimated time to arrival. So it's within a few minutes. You should see the distance decreasing. If not, you're flying away from it, so keep that in mind. So let's wait what happens. I'm gonna hide this one. So it still says, okay, we're happy. I'm gonna use a DME, which stands for distance measure equipment, right? You can measure the distance if you've got equipment on board to make, let's say, use of the that specific equipment. So we're not going to use the ILS. If you want to do it, you can still do it by pressing option 2 and then asking for the approach which you want, right? So you can say, hey, I want to use the localizer, for example, which we set up, so let's do it. We're gonna ask for the localizer and what transition. In some cases they will reject it, but in most cases they will simply accept it. And if no change is needed, they will simply not ask it. But always keep in mind that you request the approach.
Cessna 001 would like localizer runway 24 approach Romeo Oscar Tango transition. Cessna 001, you are 9 miles east.
There, they say, okay, it's fine for them. Normally you would do that prior to arriving, of course, at the transition point. So we're going to acknowledge.
Maintain present heading and altitude. Expect localizer runway 24 approach by Romeo Oscar Tango transition cleared to Romeo Oscar Tango Cessna 001.
All of text. And in the meantime, we're almost ready at the next waypoint, right? You can see that the distance is still decreasing. That's nice. And that's the power of the autopilot, right? So we discussed most buttons. Autopilot, the heading, to set a specific heading based on the heading button, which you can find here. We checked we used the nav button here to use the GPS in this case. Approach, we're gonna use it, but we're waiting a little bit. I'll explain why. Back course approach mode, that's if you set up, for example, if you want to use the ILS but it doesn't have a correct beacon on the start, or it has, let me rephrase, if you've, in this case, runway 24, but it has no ILS, you can still use the ILS of the opposite runway if it has one. But in that case you need to use the back course approach mode, because then it will, I would say, inverse the system, as far as I understood based on documentation. The L button, we used it to set the altitude, and the vertical speed buttons to increase and decrease the vertical speed. These buttons, we did not use them yet. Probably not going to use them. The barometer, which says display the power setting, hold, so it will hold specific mode, and the arm altitude mode, that's this one, it's already been activated. You can see that the aircraft now starts turning again. So that's all kind of cool. And if we're centered again or leveled out again, we'll see that we're coming close to Rotterdam Airport. So next one is Echo Hotel 2533. So 4 miles. In some cases, when you make these changes, I would say, well, already in the approach, the HC might get, I would say, crazy. So they will simply don't know, okay, what to do, and they will not give you further instructions. That's already happened to me a few times, probably because I'm not following the official process, changing the transition within a transition. It's probably not what you really want to do normally. So let's keep an eye on this. You can see that also here there's some magic buttons here on the top. GPS, navigation and GPS mode. That's to switch between navigation and GPS mode, and the GPS approach mode. So hopefully these things will start to light up once we're pressing the approach mode, which we're almost gonna do. You can already do it, as you might have seen in one of my other videos, because it will wait until it captured the glide scope and then will activate itself. So if we would do it now, it would not hurt, but it's always, I would say, something which you need to try out. In some cases it works, in some cases it doesn't work correctly. So let's do it and let's see what happens. Don't need to touch this one, I need to go to this one. And here you can see, okay, hey, it says approach, glide scope, armed. And if we would go to this one, you can still press it, but you can see it doesn't react very well. So we're gonna make the turn again. You see the lights already here from the runway. And you will, let's say, once the glide scope or once the approach mode has been activated and it has captured the glide scope, you will, let's say, you will figure it out, because then we'll really take control and really will push down the aircraft if needed, if you're too high. But currently we're still okay. So we're nicely centered. Lights all the windows.
Cessna 001, you are 9 miles northeast of Rotterdam. Contact Rotterdam Tower.
It already says, so HC is also still happy. I'm gonna acknowledge the approach.
Tower on 119.705 Cessna 001.
We're gonna contact the tower.
Rotterdam Tower, Cessna Mike India Golf 0018 miles northeast inbound localizer runway 24 approach.
Cessna Mike India Golf 001 Rotterdam Tower. Cleared localizer runway 24 approach. Altimeter 29.9er 21270 entry.
I'm gonna acknowledge.
Cleared localizer runway 24 approach Cessna 001.
So if you're not happy or if you're not sure if it works, you can always, I would say, switch off approach mode and switch it on again. In this case we're gonna open the VFR map again. Let's see, we're almost at Echo Hotel 255. And if we would go to the flight plan, right, we do that, you will see that we're coming very close to it.
Cessna 001 cleared to land runway 24.
Let's see.
1270 entry.
Acknowledge the landing.
Cleared to land runway 24
Probably it's now
Cessna
better to focus on the
001.
landing instead of playing around with those buttons. You can see those buttons are really not. This one works. This is the auto mark. And these are the, I would say, as for, I read a lot of documentation about it, but still need to figure it out. But this is the auto mark, which is really, I would say, an old system. But that tells you, okay, hey, you're on the correct path. And the next one should be the middle marker, and then we've got the inner marker. So switched on approach mode again, because it looks like that it's switched off. It's always a good sign, a good thing to validate, okay, hey, where are we and which altitude are we? You can see that it doesn't like what I'm doing. Press the wrong buttons, sorry. How far too high. So what we're gonna do is, in this case, we're gonna take control ourselves, right? Because you can see that for some reason it didn't capture the glidescope correctly. So we're gonna decrease throttling a bit. So there's always a chance that autopilot won't work as you would have hoped it would work. And we're gonna drop flaps to decrease speed, because we still want to make that successful landing, of course, on the airport. So now we're gonna focus like this. Go a little bit further to the right. Then we're gonna make hopefully a soft landing. So it wasn't a really soft landing, but at least we made a successful landing. So for some reason the approach mode didn't kick in correctly, so keep that in mind. Could have, because I'm thinking of what could be the reason. Maybe it's because of the ILS approach, which we didn't use. Although I thought that with localizer it should also normally work. If you've got experience with it and if you've got some hints and tips, please let me know by adding some comments or questions or hints to the comment box. This is where this video ends, right? So in this video we looked at the autopilot functionality of the Cessna 172. We used most of the options successfully. Unfortunately the localizer one didn't work as we hoped to. Hope you liked this video. If you like this video, then consider to use the like button. If you've got questions or comments, or in this case also tips, then use the comment box below the video. Thanks for watching. If you like to stay up to date about new videos I'm making, then make sure that you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.
118.205 for Cessna 001.